like I always like to say I'm the not the moderator, but kind of the moderator of all the chats and everything. And I just want to start off by complimenting the discussions that are happening in week one and week two have been amazing of your feedback and how you are helping each other and giving ideas more than anything. So since we last met, we have started thinking about your multi-level lesson that will be submitted by the end of week four. Implemented, I know nowadays that's a little bit different how we mean it, but implemented some strategies identified in week one and two for the likability and crossability pairing, which again I saw a lot of on the discussions after watching the videos, how a lot of you identified how the instructor was using the likability and crossability group pairing. Also, you have watched the videos on multi-level ESL class, which again, the discussions were very rich on that. A little bit with the video, and we saw how the teacher brought in her own experience into the classroom and into the lesson and making the connection to what she is teaching. I know it was a topic that was might be a little bit hard for some people to share, especially if it's a traumatic incident like with her with the burglary incident, but bring it into the classroom and also the use of realia like the glasses, the handcuffs, the fake gun. I mean, I know some people have different opinions about that, but again, it was just for the mainly to help the beginning students comprehend what's going on. The visual aid, the pictures, the sentence strips, the role playing of the students, which is always a lot of fun when we get our students participate into our lesson. The assessment that was done, the language assessment from the instructional aid. So I do recognize, and I think I did see a comment on that, how this does take a lot of time. But once you have it in place, once you've done it once, kind of like what I have, we do things like this. We do it once. The first time it does take a lot of time, but then after a while that you use it every quarter or every semester or every year, I mean, it's pretty much there already. So it doesn't take too much time again. The paraprofessional and some of the other, and I think I did read a little bit about it this in this session in the discussion boards, but there was some questions about the paraprofessional. A lot of people commented about the benefits of having a paraprofessional. I know nowadays uh, it's not very commonly they're not very commonly available in adult ed. So if you do have one, that's amazing because you could see how the paraprofessional really does help, especially with the assessment part. So then the teacher could keep. You also can use a college student who needs hours for their program. I would mainly stick. We have had college students in our program who need to finish hours. So we have had college students. Uh, High school students, again, it's up to your district's policy and your director's policy, but we stick with college students that, have a little bit more of the training on how to be an instructor. So it does help when it's a college student. And then plus, you could always make that connection with your students is to, everybody, you could also go to college and this could be you as well. Advance here. The background reading B, we were talking about reading about class unity and how all students work on the same topic, but on different levels. And students feel connected. Many times we would see, and I say we because I would do it as well towards the beginning of my career, is I would have different topics for the beginning students, different topics for the advanced students. So there wasn't that connection. But when you are talking about the same topic, but on different levels, that makes them feel that they're all connected. They're all learning the same concept, but at different levels. So for example, the topic that we selected for this activity is, for this example, is the American culture. So the warm up would be I introduce the topic, and we're reading about the American culture, and then we would use realia to introduce the topic to the whole class, and then also a short video to introduce the topic. So uh, most of our students in our class are speak Spanish as their primary language. We do have a couple students who speak Arabic, so that is why we created, for example, here we have flag, and then in Spanish bandera, and then in class, we would have a student, one of our Arabic speaking students, translated in Arabic. And then most of them knew because they would see the flag. So here we would introduce to them the flag, Thanksgiving, Statue of Liberty, the White House. So then they start seeing these picture cues, and then they start realizing, oh, we're going to start talking about American culture. And then we talk about, the flag, that's our national symbol, Thanksgiving, it's a national holiday, Statue of Liberty, White House, and so forth. So then the students, we start introducing the topic with them. We also might show a short video, again, to introduce the topic that we're going to be discussing. And then the presentation will be the new information that we'll be giving to all the students in the class in all the levels. So we would read about the topic. We would do a closed reading activity. So a closed reading activity would be like this, where I would read the sentence, if it's either on their handout or on the board or on the display, however you're displaying it to the students. For example, the USA flag has three colors, and then the USA blank has three colors. So then the closed reading activity would be that the students would identify that the word flag is missing. So then they would either write it in or they would say it aloud in the class. So this is one way how we introduce a new topic to the students. Usually it's a reading activity. Again, it's very general. It could be a little bit too difficult for our beginning students. But then again, when we reinforce it with images, pictures, and then the video, then they will start getting the more of the concept of what is of the activity that they're doing. Again, you may use a video to reinforce what was read. Sometimes I would play the video at the beginning, and then we would do the reading activity, and then I would reinforce that reading activity with the video that's related to the text that we read. And then the student would start picking up on the cues of like, oh, this is what they're talking about, and this is what this means, and things like that. And then sometimes I just share the link with the students. That way they could watch it at their leisure. When we're talking about grouping students, so this is after the presentation part. So we've done the introduction, the warm-up, we've done the presentation. Now we're at the point where we're going to start grouping our students. This could be a little bit challenging because we want to make it as transparent as possible, meaning we don't want to label the students. The students are very, very intelligent. They'll start picking up the seasoned students are in another group. That's going to be, they're going to see the labeling right away. So you want to make it as transparent as possible. What do I mean by that is maybe alternating every couple of days. I wouldn't say every day because it is a big task to get your students into group. I would use also initial placement tests results to assist students, to assign students in grouping. Whatever testing intake you take, it could be a unit test of the book, maybe it's your district's initial placement test. So I would use those results, whichever ones you feel are you're more comfortable using, to use them to determine how you're going to group your students. I would also pair shy students with the more social students. That always is good because it will get them to start talking a little bit more, to feel less. Sometimes they're just frightened of being in something new. But when you pair them with a more social student, they might start getting comfortable and start speaking or practicing their English. But most importantly, the teacher knows their students best. So I would take into consideration the placement test, but ultimately you know your students the best. So you would know how to group your students in a way where it will avoid the labeling to say, oh well, that group they're like that, or all the students who speak Arabic are in this group, and all the students that we want to eliminate that. So that's what I mean, make it as transparent as possible. So how do you group students? So in the chat box here that we have, how do you, it says, write how you group your students. So, oops, I'm sorry, skipped ahead. So what are ways that you group your, oh, I am so sorry. There we go. So in the chat box, if you could type how you group your students, or how you would group your students when we were back in the classroom. Okay, so we have about 2 minutes. Okay, so by level, okay. And I think that's the easiest way that we would all do it. Even myself, by level. Before I would have like all the beginning students here, all the intermediate students there, based on their TABE results. Very good. But it did not work well. Okay, yeah. And sometimes it might not, like we said previously, you, the teacher, best. Like Eduarda says, she used the from the TABE results, mainly for ABE or ASC. And okay, so let's see any other ways how you would group your students. I know some agencies that I visited, they were they had a lot of different languages in the class, so they would be like by language, but sometimes that was hard also. Sometimes I grouped them by level. um, a shy with a more sociable student, beginning, intermediate, advanced, yes, okay. And I think pretty much we've all done that because it makes, for me, I mean, it makes sense. If I'm going to have all the beginning students here, all the intermediate students there, and all the advanced students over here, so that would be more of the likability grouping. For some activities, I use random team generators. I know a lot of applications that we use in class do that automatically. Okay, so it looks like in the same lesson, likability, then mixed ability, crossability, good. Okay, very good. So I think everybody has stopped typing. Let me go ahead and, okay. So the likability, which it seems that it's what we've done the most and what we put here when we have students in the same level together. So a teacher works with each level, rotates a group, and assigns tasks to each group to work together. So this would be when we have all the beginning students, intermediate and advanced, and then the teacher would be the one who rotates to a different group. And then in this one, notice that there's assigned tasks. Some of the assigned tasks could be a timekeeper. You tell the students you have 20 minutes, 30 minutes to work on this activity. You might have a timekeeper, a note taker, and a reporter who would report back to the class. So you want to also assign tasks to each group. For example, a low beginning ESL group, if they're working together, you draw a picture about a vocabulary. Find the definition of the word and use the word in a simple sentence. So that would be the activity for the second group. And then for the third group, your intermediate advanced, could be a closed reading activity using vocabulary words and use words in a paragraph about a topic. So in this one here, the whole class is working on together on the same topic. Let's what we put about American culture. So the low beginning group, they would draw a picture of the flag, and then they would label, for example, stars, red stripe, white stripe. And then the beginning high, they would define the words. For example, they would find the definition for flag, or they would find a definition for, whatever words that you have, and then they would also write them in a sample sentence or a simple sentence. And then your intermediate would be the ones doing the closed reading activity, again, using the vocabulary words that were introduced at the beginning of the topic. So the teacher here is rotating from group to group, and then within each group, you have people who have assigned tasks. So that's what we call the likability grouping, which seems that this is what a lot of you identified right now in the previous chat, is that where you group your students by level. The likability grouping is you set a time to all groups, for example, um, do the task, and then each group will have a, I always call it the time police or the timekeeper. Choose an evaluation for each group also is what is going to be an acceptable piece of evaluation for each of the groups that you have in the classroom. So for example, for your beginning ESL, a form of evaluation is by asking a student or some students, what did you draw? What's the name? So making reference again, if they drew a flag, they would say, what did they draw? They would respond like a flag. And then, you could identify what's the name of the, or from what country. Maybe it's the USA flag, maybe it's their native flag. High ESL student, you would ask them what is the definition of, whatever word, and then they'll be able to give you a definition. For the intermediate, what is the context of the word? And for an advanced is what is the main topic and details of your paragraph, and what are your supporting evidence. So this would be more informal evaluation that you would do with the groups. But again, it would be the teacher who is asking these questions to each group based on their level in the likability grouping. Again, I think one of the tasks that the students like the most when we do something like this is the timekeeper, because it's teaching them time management. And a lot of our students don't have that ability. Sometimes they, for X, Y, or Z reason. But when you start doing it in class and you start assigning tasks like this, and the importance of time, especially in American culture in jobs, how you have to be there on time, or in appointments, you have to be there on time, things like that. So it's always good to teach these skills to our students that they could transfer and use outside of the classroom. So let's go ahead and chat now. We're going to have another 2 minutes. Is, have you used likability grouping in the past? So it seems that most of us have. And then tell us, so maybe how is it that you would use it, or maybe how you would assess it as well. Okay, so I'll give you about 2 minutes. And as you're typing, I'll just be sharing some ideas that I've read as well in the posts for these past few weeks. Some of them, again, a majority of you would say that you would use the likability grouping. There were also some a little bit of drawbacks to that, where a lot of people said that it could be a little bit challenging, and you're right. Okay, so and okay. Okay, so let's think about another minute or so. Okay, so using both types of grouping, and yes, and I think we do. I mean, I know definitely use both. A lot of them, we have a conversation in class, and then with the most outgoing students once a week for about 20 minutes before a break. Okay, not familiar with the likability until the video. Okay, it was in the same lesson. About another minute. And having also conversations, we would always include a conversation piece into all of our ESL classes. And this is one where definitely you would have likability grouping. You would have students at the beginning level, intermediate, and advanced, so forth. And then you could hear the different type of discussions going on with the same topic. So it's always very rewarding to hear, even at the beginning level, is they have so much to say, and then also the advanced students have so much more to share and to elaborate on what a lot of people said. Okay, so let's go ahead and continue to the next slide. So, okay, let's see. Usually, likability grouping to teach different grammar points and vocabulary around a similar theme. Yeah, now with this learning have separate Google Classrooms for my low, beginning, high. Yes, and I know I understand now with the how things have shifted. It is going to be a little bit more harder to do to do things is you have them separated into different uh, platform, well, Google Classrooms based on their level, which is great because you really are going to target your instruction more directly to them without an additional barrier. Okay. Crossability grouping. So the crossability grouping, honestly, for me, it's probably one of my favorite types of grouping because this is where I see the collaboration. This is what you see when you're out in the workforce, that people collaborate, people are solving situations. And this is what we want to teach in the classroom. So then that way they have that ability to implement outside of the classroom in the community and also in their jobs, is where students are grouped with all levels in each group. So you'll have, and I don't do more than five. I mean, I would have like a low beginning, intermediate, and advanced student. And then in that way, it would be 3 to 4. Four being again ideal because then you would have one student at each level, and each student takes a part to achieve an end result. It's not that only the advanced student and the intermediate students are going to do the work, but everybody is going to have the work distributed equally. It also teaches, as I mentioned previously, work readiness skills, the soft skills. It teaches communication, collaboration, problem solving, and but most importantly, working together as a group. And I know in some situations, especially going back to the discussion post that I was reading, is that sometimes students, advanced or intermediate students, don't want to participate in this type because they want to be able to advance more in their English, which is understandable. And they might feel like they're taking the place of the teacher with the beginning or the beginning high student. But again, we want to always emphasize that it's a group activity, that everybody's functioning at different levels, just like a job in a job setting, and that it's more for collaboration and helping each other because even the beginning student, they have something important to share with the group. And it's not only going to be the advanced students. So we always want to remind our students that we all have something important to share. And that's why we like this type of setting where everybody could help each other and work together. In crossability grouping, each person in the group has an additional task. So not only are they communicating and also working together, but as mentioned before, you'll have the timekeeper. And that's why I like it having it in groups of four because I like assigning no more than four tasks. You have the timekeeper. Again, the timekeeper might be your very beginning student who their task is only to say, you have 10 minutes, you have 5 minutes. Your note taker, you'll have your note taker who could be the high beginning or even the intermediate student. Then you would have the student who's the speaker, who again, and this one could fit in any level of ESL, as well as the reporter, the one who reports to the whole class. So again, it doesn't mean that your low beginning is always going to be the timekeeper, but usually for new students who are come into a classroom, you don't want to overwhelm them with a big task, and then they'll probably never come back into your classroom, which was a situation that happened as a student. And they said it was because when we did the group activity, I was I was nominated in my group to be the one who would speak to the whole class, and it was his first day. So, yeah, so you might want to take those little things into consideration and not do the mistake I did, and having them assign a big task. The goal is for the students to learn from each other, but also to collaborate and to support each other. So that's always very important because in a multi-level class, uh, that's what you want. You are going to be more of a facilitator, the teacher, but you do want the students to collaborate together, work together, learn from each other. Of course, they have you as their main support. But your teacher role, again, would be more to facilitate and assist each cross-ability group. So it will probably be not that you'll be asking different questions to each group, but it will probably be a little bit easier because you'll be asking the same questions to each group because they're all mixed. And again, the role of us would be more of facilitator. So that's always nice because you get to hear more in-depth conversations with students. And then sometimes I would coax students if they're just very quiet. I'll kind of stand there a little bit and coax them a little bit more just to get them talking. So you do have that opportunity as well. Okay, so let's go ahead and take about 2 minutes. Is have you used cross-ability grouping in the past? Maybe you didn't identify it as a cross-ability, but maybe this is how you would um, do it with your students. So let's go ahead. I know for some of us, we would always number off our students. I know I would. I would be like 1, 2, 3, all the ones over here, all the twos over here, all the threes over here. That wouldn't be either a cross-ability or likability because I'm just numbering. But if the crossability is, I would identify what students are my low, intermediate, advanced, or even the beginning, the pre-lit. You might have a lot of students who are also pre-lit, okay? So go ahead and have you used crossability grouping in the past? And write about your experience. Did it go well? Was it challenging? Maybe for what subjects you worked it, like Eduardo says in the math lesson. Um, and that's the thing. We've been doing this for so long, but we never had a term. I know for me, when I learned about these terms, I'm like, wait a minute, I've been doing this and this, but it actually has a term now. And good that it went well, mostly for team building activities. Um, Yeah, and that's what could happen, like Kyla says, is that it turn into the high level leading the low level students not really participating. And that's what we want to do is relieve that burden from them because then they're going to feel that they're the ones who are doing the um, most of the talking. Uh, Using informally, didn't know the term either. Placing a more outgoing student with a quieter student, having higher level students. Okay, good. And I think like what Anna says is having higher level students um, help. I would probably use the word help lower level students more because then we um, we don't want to label that student to be like, oh, go to them. Then don't, they'll help you with it. Okay. Okay. So, and again, and we want to make those students feel like the students feel that, all of you are contributing. It's not that one person in a group knows more or is able to communicate more efficiently, but everybody is there to work together. So I did have that situation at one point where students were like, well, why me? Why am I only the one, always the one helping? So then I would kind of be in there in that group a little bit more and be like, okay, everybody has to contribute at least one or two things into the activity. Like Esmeralda says, I enjoy seeing how students are willing to help each other and that they really enjoy working with each other. Um, so great. I'm glad, it's been successful. It has been successful, but again, each class is so different. For 1 year, it worked wonderful. The second year, I had a same level of ESL with another group of students, and it didn't work well. It took me almost half a year to get them to that point where they could actually work together, collaborating. Closing activities. So after we've done the introduction to the lesson, the presentation, the group activity, now we want to close the activity. So how do role playing, which is kind of what the teacher did in the video with two students, out of class related activity and then report back. That's a wonderful one because, or sometimes I hear it from people outside of the classroom say how my students were interacting with them. And it also reinforces the main vocabulary or grammar lesson that was introduced. So I know many of us also for closing activities might use some type of assessment, which again, that's perfectly fine. But in a lot of materials that that are available that a lot of schools use. I know that they do have a lot of group presentation or group activities that they could do. And again, you would find which closing activity is going to work well with your class. And then again, from there, do take into consideration if you're going to do it either in a likability setting or a crossability setting. Materials, some of the materials, as we said, commercial materials from publishers, from different vendors, teacher created materials, kind of like this video. So I know, especially now, a lot of teachers are creating a lot of their own material to teach from colleagues or students. And you'd be surprised. I mean, some of the students, when we do flashcards, I'm terrible at drawing. So one of my students would be the one who would draw the picture for the vocabulary words that I would use when we were doing a co-op activity. And, even student created material with, your assistant is valuable because it's something that they put the time and effort to help, and it's going to help the students as well. So the different types of material that you use, always use whatever you're using, um, tie it to your end piece of how you're going to close your activity. So let's go ahead in the chat box. What type of materials do you use? So do you borrow from online, from a colleague, from seasoned books? And I always like seasoned books, as one person said, is they recognize the name uh, of the instructor in the video, and then they realize that she's the one who has several books that she would use in the classroom. So, what type of materials do you use? So, student created materials are amazing. I mean, they're really amazing. We have a laminating machine, so we laminate everything that our students do. A mixture of all, yes, especially right now. Um, we have a disc with materials that wow, that's good. Let's see, for about another minute. Okay. And again, there's a lot of information online. Whenever we do borrow material online, we always want to make sure we give the appropriate credits. That's also something for our students to learn, is that they just can't go to the internet and pull something out and use it for them. I always like teaching copyright and how someone's work, when you use it, determining how you're going to be using it, always give them credit. Lots of online material like Quizlet, yes, Kahoot, Lexia, those are great, Brian. Okay, very good. Let's go ahead and continue. So, podcast 3. Now we're online materials, student generated, cutting out visual. Yes, the magazines. I mean, I have so many subscriptions to magazines I get for free. I always take them into the classroom, and we do use it also for visuals and for good ways to start. I mean, some of them are a little bit, you know, some of them might not be appropriate for the class, but I tend to pull those out before taking them into the class. Podcast 3, the 7 stages of a lesson. So now we're going to start going more into our project of planning a lesson. So when we do lesson planning, I mean, we've all done it at different levels. Those of us who come from the K-12 or more specifically the elementary background, we're so used to writing detailed lessons down to the dot. But when we're doing an adult ed lesson, it could be a little bit different, okay? We do have the 7 stages, which is first, we want to plan for the warm-up and the review. So what do I mean by the warm-up or the review? Sometimes we will start a lesson the middle of the week, the weekend comes around, and then Monday, just like children, adults, we tend to forget, or maybe we need that little spark to make us remind what was taught. The introduction is when we would state our objective, okay? In one of the posts, I did see how somebody said that every day on the board, they would have an agenda up on the board they would state what they would do. So that's always good to have that in your lesson, is to introduce the objectives and also the CCRS. I mean, at a time where we want our students to be college and career ready, I always include the college and career readiness standards under my objective. The presentation, make sure that it's comprehensible to all levels, means including realia or including images, a video. So you want to make sure it's and also some visuals, like some reading for the students who are very visual. Also for our auditory students, something that's more auditive, like a podcast maybe. So you want to make sure that the presentation is comprehensible to all levels. The guided practice would be your group work. Is how are you going to what activities are the students going to do in a group? Is it going to be a likability grouping, a crossability grouping? The communicative is use the new skills in a group. The evaluation. So what is your evaluation piece? It's going to be a snapshot of the content that was mastered. So you're going to determine what piece of evidence you're going to accept as your evaluation. And most importantly, the application. How are they going to use this skill outside of the classroom? Because we always want our students to learn something in our classroom that could be transferred outside of the classroom into their community, into their family, or even into their job. So these would be what we call the WIPEA, the 7 stages of a lesson. So in podcast 4, they were talking about group work. And again, going back a little bit to what was said, is to have students in a likability grouping for content, and do crossability or the jigsaw strategy, and the students become an expert in their content and share with others. So the jigsaw strategy, I know a lot of us are familiar with it, is where one student would be the expert of that content and then they would share it with another group. So you would do the likability first and then the crossability. So this is how, especially in the chat here, I noticed that some people did say that they use both strategies. So this is one way how in podcast 4 it was identified, is you would do your likability grouping for content and then the crossability grouping to teach the other students what you learned about that content. So then for fluency, for example, crossability works best for fluency. Have a timekeeper to stay on task, because I know these tasks sometimes, I always give them about 10-15 minutes, but I do realize sometimes it takes them a little bit longer. So if I'm still seeing that at the 10-minute mark that they're still having rich conversations and things, I let them go. But sometimes if they finish within 5 minutes, I know that especially for the crossability where they're sharing their strategy with others might have not happened. So that's when I would kind of intervene a little bit. Podcast 5 is talking about group work as well. So jobs in a group based on language skill and level. The challenge, of course, is higher level students dominating. And so we see that a lot. So we practice problem solving skills, having timekeeper help. So we just don't want to have the burden, or for the advanced student to feel that it's a burden that they have to be helping everybody. But everybody takes a part by having different assigned tasks. Okay. As I mentioned before, in the WIPEA model, when we do the warm-up, we always tap into their prior knowledge. I mean, we just don't want to dump something new to them that they're going to be like, well, wait a minute. So you always want to have prior knowledge. So if we think about the video with the teacher on the realia, she started talking about, her experience when she experienced a burglary, and the students will start tapping into that prior knowledge. Maybe it hasn't happened to them, but I know in one of the classes a few years ago, we did something similar, and it was a activity on how to report to when calling 911, and it was traumatic. Like 2 days before this activity, so without me knowing and starting to do this, so it was a little bit traumatic for her. But you do want to tap into their prior knowledge. Maybe I would show them something in the local news about maybe if burglaries are going up, or things like that, something that's not so personal. Introduction, you would provide a broad overview of the content. So this is what we're going to be learning about. The presentation is that you would teach the lesson and the content. And again, it could be a 1 day, kind of like in the video with the burglary, what it seemed to be kind of like a 1 day or 2 day thing. But if you're doing a whole unit, then you're going to have different units every day, or lessons every day. The guided practice, again, the practice is the group work, again, the likability, the crossability. The evaluation, where you're going to assess what was learned via a something informal, where you ask each group, or it could be like a quiz, or again, you are going to determine what is going to be the best appropriate form of evaluation. It could be a group project, it could be a group activity. And the application, so the application of the new acquired skill, how are they going to use it outside of the classroom? And I think that's always important, that we want to make sure that the lessons that we teach in the classroom, that they're not only going to stay there, but that they go out into the community and help the students in the community. Okay. So when we start looking at our multi-level planning form, you're going to notice that you have the class objective. So you would identify what is the class objective. So that's going to be your overarching objective. What is it that you want your class to do? It could be, for example, like if I'm going back to the video of the teacher with the burglary, maybe that class objective was reporting a crime. So for the beginner objective, what is going to be the objective for the beginning student? Maybe using a couple of adjectives to describe a burglar, okay, or the thief. Your intermediate objective, so it could be having a conversation with a 911 operator. And your advanced objective is writing a police report. So that would be an example of how you would do a multi-level planning. You would have the warm-up. How are you going to introduce it to the classroom? What presentation type are you going to use? Okay. Like in the teacher, again, she used her experience, she used Realia. Maybe you'll do a PowerPoint, or a video, or role play. And then the practice. So what is going to be the practice for the beginning student? What is going to be the practice for the intermediate student? And what is going to be practice for the advanced student? Now, I do realize that with the beginning, you might have some students that are pre-literate students. So you might want to consider that as well. They're usually not as many. Well, in my experience, hasn't been that many, but we always want to include them in the piece as well. Okay. Here is a video lesson plan. For example, the warm-up. The instructor used TPR, total physical response, to review personal characteristics. The introduction, the instructor asked the question about identifying a man using visuals from a magazine. The presentation, the instructor, and this is going off again on the video that we saw during week 2. The instructor told a personal story about a robbery in a bank, in a parking lot, using visuals. The instructor asked questions about the story and used sentence strips to summarize, and to also to facts needed to make a police report. And then here you could see in the practice, we have the likability and we have the crossability. And you're going to notice that these are pretty much go across for the advanced and intermediate. For the beginning, it's a little bit different, okay? You could see that for the advanced, they have the students in groups of 3, create a role play about a robbery, crime of event. Intermediate students in groups of 3, sequence pictures and describe events in a robbery. The beginners would work with dialogue and substitute personal information. So, and then here you could see also the strategy level. You could see there's more of the crossability than the likability. The evaluation, you could see again how they are different. The student presents the role plays to the class for year advanced. Students complete an autograph activity, a writing activity in the beginning. Students are evaluated as they work with an aide or work with, maybe even somebody, uh, a visitor to the class, maybe from another group or maybe another instructor. And the students complete the activity usually with guidance. Okay. The application, the instructor asks the students to find a picture of a person, describe it to a friend, bring it to school the next day as a follow-up. So how are they going to use this? Or sometimes we would say, okay, find an article maybe about a burglary or maybe a post on Facebook or something like that. We would ask the students to, and usually this would happen over the weekend. So on Monday, they would bring in that information. Okay, let me see here. Okay, so I'm just gonna keep this screen on for a little bit longer. Let me see here if I could. Okay, give me 1 second. I'm sorry, I'm having a little bit of, I'm used to working on two screens, and working on a laptop, sometimes I tend to lose half of my page. So again, this is something that you're going to be working with as you develop your own lesson. It's something that you could use to pace and to guide yourself with. And even though it does seem like it is, and especially if you haven't heard of these terms of the WIPEA model, backwards design, things like that, but this at least is going to provide you with a template on how you could structure your activity that is due in week 4, by the end of week 4, which would be by the end of next week, not this Sunday, but the next Sunday. Okay. Okay. So with that, if you have any questions, you could always feel free to email me or also in the discussion boards. But sometimes if you just have questions about something, it'll be easier if you email me directly. So you have my email here, and then I'll be more than happy to respond to you. So thank you very much.
Thank
And
you very much, Francisco. Appreciate, as always, your expert facilitation. Hope everybody enjoyed the webinar. And again, there is a webinar link. If you just copy and paste it, I put it in the chat pod. If everybody would be so kind as to complete that, we would very much appreciate it. And again, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out via email or via Moodle. Thanks again. Have a great afternoon and enjoy the rest of your afternoon. Oh, just a reminder, the recording link will be in Moodle in the makeup assignment no later than tomorrow morning. Thanks again. Thank you, Francisco. Thank you,
thank you.
everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.